than I think either of us would like to admit. But Ed is a graduate of Smith College School for Social Work in Massachusetts, where he earned his Master of Social Work. He's worked in outpatient mental health and primary care at the San Antonio uh, VA healthcare system and in adolescent day treatment in Colorado before coming to the Madison VA hospital in 2007. He's been the Justice Programs Coordinator since 2009 and is a licensed clinical social worker, kind of specifically related to his Veterans Justice Programs Coordinate. That is a mouthful. That's the work that he does as the Justice Programs Coordinator. He's worked with veterans in the justice system for over 10 years, including helping to start the Dane County, Wisconsin Jail Veterans Unit, the Madison, Wisconsin Veterans Law Center, and the Veterans Court in Rockford, Illinois, Janesville, and Madison. He's a trained facilitator of moral reconation therapy. I probably pronounced that incorrectly. I did Google it to see if I could find a pronunciation, and they didn't have a pronunciation guide, so I apologize. And he served on the board of the Illinois Association of Problem Solving Courts as well. Hopefully with all this Illinois relation, he's not also a Bears fan, but even if you are, Ed, we won't hold it against you. So it's really my pleasure to introduce Ed Zappala, who's going to kick us off with today's panel.
Wow. Well, thank you, Kathy, so much. And I apologize everybody for having to listen to that lengthy sort of bio about me. Definitely yeah. But thank you so much, Kathy, and I appreciate the invitation so much to be here and just all of you being here. The other folks on the panel here, they're all very busy and they all showed up. And so I'm just so thankful for that as well. Um, Connie, do you want me to, are you going to be sharing our slides, Connie, or do you want me to do that?
In theory, you should be able to do it yourself. Can you check
Okay.
and see?
I think since you're sharing, I cannot right now, is what it's telling me. If you want to maybe stop sharing.
I have to figure out how to stop sharing. Oh, there it is.
All right. Okay. Let's give this a shot. Are folks seeing that now? There we go.
Yay.
That is up a little bit, pardon me. Okay, so um, as Kathy, kind of laid out here up front in the invitation, this is all about equipping Justice and all veterans for success. And Kathy, thank you for your introduction yet again. The way we're going to kind of work things today is we're each going to have about 10 minutes for each of our portions. And then at the end, we'll have about 15 minutes for questions and discussions at the end. Please, though, as we go, if you have some question for us, feel free to put it in the chat. I can't read the chat right now, but I'm guessing somebody could help me with that at the end. I'll be starting things off, kind of setting the stage with the Department of VA's Veterans Justice Programs. And then we have Officer Dukers, who will be speaking about the work he's done in Madison with law enforcement. And then Assistant Public Defender Nicholson will be speaking about the Rock County Veterans Treatment Court. And then we will have Corrections Field Supervisor Posselt and Warden Stevens. Looks like Warden Stevens was able to make it, which is great. I know it was a little iffy for him. And they'll be talking about the reentry from prisons kind of work, and really some of the things that Wisconsin does that we think is really special. So as far as setting the stage, I work for the VA hospital, as you've heard. I want to kind of thank the veteran service partners we have here today. So on the panel, we've got partners from basically the criminal legal system. That's essential to how we do this work. But also others are also so important in how we do this work. So WDVA, we partner in a number of ways. CVSOs, also so important. Department of Workforce Development, so important. VetsCAN, Connie, I saw Keith earlier. You know, we've done some work as well, presenting, for example. So all of that is so important, those partnerships. I also want to say that we are just covering a small sample of the efforts that are kind of happening in this sphere. Some of the work that's happening for Justice Involved Veterans or with Justice Involved Veterans doesn't include VA's involvement at all, and that's fine. Some of it predates VA's formal involvement. So I really want to be clear that the VA does not own this work by any stretch. I was just talking to Joe Naylor about the Vet Center, their really early work with veterans in prison in Madison, for example. So I want to kind of start by getting us kind of rooted as far as, you know, why we're talking about this today. And this is a real story from New York of a veteran, and his name is Reginald. He served in the Army, and his full name is Reginald Newkirk, and he served from 1980 to 1983, at which point he was honorably discharged. After his return to civilian life, he did get involved in substance use, and he became homeless in 1990. He said, "I was living on the streets, selling and using drugs. It was a tough time for me." He ended up in a number of state prisons and in the Rikers Island jail. And then he had a drug-related case that entered the Manhattan Veterans Treatment Court program. From there, he was referred to a residential treatment program for veterans. Also from there, he was able to connect with the Manhattan VA Medical Center's Compensated Work Therapy, or CWT program. He got employment therapy and group counseling. So COVID really limited his options for housing and employment, but Reginald really showed resilience and strength by staying away from drugs and alcohol. And in June 2020, he got connected to the Housing and Urban Development VA Supportive Housing, talk about mouthfuls, or the HUD-VASH program, and they got him connected with a home in Brooklyn's Brownsville neighborhood. In March 2021, after 3 years of court-mandated programs, his felony case was dismissed by the Manhattan court, and he had a virtual graduation, and he was deemed an inspiration for fellow veterans. And he said, "Right now, it feels really good. It feels good to know that I accomplished some things." And he is now in his own apartment. He's a mentor for veterans in that CWT program, and he offers them encouragement. So Reginald is one example, and it kind of brings to life this. So this is from the VA's policy on this work. And I highlighted this piece as far as the why we do this, at least. So it says that data from multiple studies show that criminal justice populations have many risk factors, such as histories of homelessness, mental illness, substance abuse, unemployment, and high rates of chronic health problems and infectious disease that place them at high risk for recidivism and for failure in community functioning. So really a lot of this you saw in Reginald's example, is in his trajectory. So this is where Veterans Justice Programs, or VJP, comes into play. So we are a part of the VA Homeless Program Office, and our mission is to identify Justice Involved veterans and contact them through outreach in order to facilitate access to VA services at the earliest possible point. And we do this by building and maintaining partnerships between VA and key elements of the criminal justice system. So that's sort of why we do what we do, and what we do in kind of a larger kind of scale, or larger kind of picture. But I want to show you now this image. So this is The sequential intercept model, I realize there's a lot here on this page, but this is a kind of a model used to organize efforts in diverting individuals out of the criminal justice system and towards services when it's appropriate. And you can see here there's a number of intercept points is what we call them. And that's because people flow usually through the system in a kind of predictable way. And you can do different things at different points in the system to have that kind of diversion occur. So in the beginning there, you can see intercept 0, that's community services. So the idea is that if you just provide good, for example, mental health care, maybe maybe a person never gets involved in the criminal justice system. And then if you move over one more, you can see that there's intercept 1, and that is law enforcement. So here, I'll show you here. That's for VJP, we do some education of law enforcement, for example, and we do some other work with them. And Officer Dukers will be talking more about his work at this intercept level. And then moving over, we have intercept 2, which is initial detention, initial court hearings. And then we have intercept 3, which is jails and courts. So for VJP, we are liaisons and provide some case management to veterans in veteran treatment court programs, for example. And Colin will be speaking about that. And we also do jail outreach as well. And that work at the front end of the system is what we call VJO, or Veterans Justice Outreach. Then at the end of the system, we have reentry, in particular reentry from prison. So that again is something that we do. We outreach into the prison system. And we've got Chris and Craig will be talking more about that. And then lastly, we have community corrections, and Craig is a part of community corrections, so he can speak about that, but that's at that probation and parole level. So again, I realize that's a lot, but that's just sort of in an image, hopefully will be helpful to you to kind of see a bit of what we do, and also to kind of lay out what the panelists do as well. So speaking of our panelists, all right, so I'm going to hand it over now to Officer Andy Dukers, who is a mental health officer with the Madison Police Department.
Well, thank you, Ed. Yeah, I'm Andy Dukers. I've been with Madison Police Department for going on 8 years now, and I've been in my current role as a mental health officer for a little over a year and a half. Prior to this, I was a firefighter paramedic in California, and then I did serve in the Marine Corps between 1997 and 2001. I got out in March just before 9/11 happened. Madison Police Department is fortunate enough to have a full-time mental health unit. So I'm one of 6. We have one mental health officer that is assigned to each of our 6 police districts to work primarily with that district and the citizenry that we come into contact with there. I am not any kind of clinical in the mental health realm. I've picked up a lot in my time here, but I rely on a partnership that we have with Journey Mental Health. So we kind of check off the intercepts 0 and 1 because we co-respond with clinical social workers from Journey Mental Health to try and to head off the traditional criminal justice system and to drive people that are suffering from mental illnesses towards resources that can help break the cycle that they're stuck in. So I am merely the security on a lot of these calls, and I rely heavily on my embedded crisis worker who comes along with me and is really the clinical one that has a better working knowledge of the system. When I first took over for the Central District, which is where I work out of, the Central District for Madison Police, right by the Capitol. When I first took over, it was identified by my sergeant supervisor that one of the areas that was lacking with within our unit was any kind of familiarity with the VA system. And so I've been using VA healthcare as my primary healthcare since I discharged from the military. So I had identified my willingness to try and build a bridge between our local government and the federal system. So I was able to reach out to Ed. And as a part of making acquaintances with him, I was able to learn about the vast amount of resources that are available to the citizens that we run into contact with on a daily basis. I was fortunate enough to be able to sit in on a session for the Vets Court, and it happened to be a graduation day. So getting to see how somebody had successfully completed the program, got their charges wiped out, and then acting as an inspiration for those that are still going through the process. So yeah, law enforcement, for one reason or another, is generally the first person that is coming into contact with veterans in the community, for good or bad. And most of the time, police are dispatched is because dispatchers don't know who else to send them to. So it's often law enforcement that's showing up. Thankfully, at Madison Police Department, at least, we're trying to push out as much education in the mental health realm as we can to the entire department, sworn and civilian. And it's spreading now as well. Dane County Sheriff's has a established mental health unit, and other outlying agencies in the county, such as Fitchburg, are in the process of setting it up. What this is doing then is just allowing mental health officers like myself, who aren't call driven and dispatched to specific calls, to monitor all of the calls for service that are lined up and that patrol officers are dispatched to. And then we can identify avenues that we can plug ourselves into where it seems like there is a mental illness on board, or somebody's in a crisis. And then we can drive them towards resources that we're familiar with, that patrol officers aren't necessarily knowledgeable about. In my contacts with Ed, I was introduced to the Squares program. And I don't know if that'll be talked about anymore, but basically it's just a program where community partners that are partnered up with the VA can run an individual that has identified as being a veteran to see if they're eligible for services. This has been a very helpful tool in my work. I guess just one example that comes to mind is a coworker of mine who's a mental health officer in the East District did come into contact with a community member that was in crisis, and he did self-identify as a veteran. So he was suicidal or actively suicidal. He was taken to the VA hospital, and he was shown to a room, got a warm blanket, and started talking to the social workers. But then by the time admission was able to verify that he had been dishonorably discharged, it was explained to him that he couldn't utilize the VA health services. And then that kind of leaves officers to find other resources that are available. Now with the Squares program, if somebody is, either identifies themselves as a veteran, or we're able to come across that information, we're able to run them through the Squares program to see what services they're available for, which really cuts down on time and frustration. Here's a person that's in crisis, and they think that they're going to get help, but they're not able to seek help at one place. It's just delaying that interaction that they have, and obvious source of frustration with this individual. So all of the mental health officers that I work with have access to this program. And then we're starting to utilize it in other ways in the department. I gave a little training to our SWAT crisis negotiators, who are able to use the Squares program. That way, if they are dealing with any kind of a veteran that's in crisis, in a barricaded hostage situation, they're able to use that in their negotiations, again, to try and get this veteran help. The rest of the criminal justice system is there to do its thing. But if you don't treat the underlying mental illness, are we ever going to stop the cycle of incarceration and then being released and then reoffending? So it's just a little bit on how Madison Police Department, and as I said, other departments in Dane County and statewide are starting to utilize partnerships between mental health units and the VA system to serve the veterans that are in the community.
Yeah, thanks so much, Officer Dukers. And I want to say too that when we talk about our work of trying to connect with veterans at the earliest possible point, that's why our work with folks like Officer Dukers is so important. As folks get further down the stream of the justice system, they can really take on a lot of collateral consequences of their legal involvement. So, so it's so important that the work that Officer Dukers is doing with others. So thank you, sir. So I'm going to now move along further down that intercept model to intercept 3, and we'll have Assistant Public Defender Colin Nicholson speaking about the Rock County Vet Court and beyond. Thanks.
Thanks, Ed. Yeah, I'm a Assistant State Public Defender in Rock County here in the Janesville office. I've been a member of the Veterans Treatment Court here for probably just over a year. Before that, I was in the Marines from 2012 to 2017. I lived in the barracks for 5 years, did 2 tours overseas, and came back from that and really saw how that affected people and what struggles they had and how they were dealing with it. And I'm really happy to be on this treatment court and help out fellow service members with whatever issues they have and get them back to a stable place. But yeah, looking at that intercept model, if you look at that 3rd spot, the arrow just goes straight through. There's no other consequences for someone as long as they finish that treatment court. So they won't have to go to jail or prison, usually, as long as it's not an OWI or something along those lines. So just giving a little background around where Veterans Treatment Court started. My understanding, sounds like from what the intro was, Ed was around when that kicked off, but it was under the leadership of Judge James Daly. He was a Marine Vietnam veteran, Purple Heart recipient, and retired Brigadier General of the United States Army National Guard. And he started Wisconsin's first Veterans Treatment Court here in Rock County. And the objective of the court is to give veterans who faithfully served their country a second chance by offering them treatment for their substance abuse and or mental health issues rather than incarceration or just traditional probation. And that's done under the supervision of our Veterans Court team. The Rock County Veterans Court team, we provide a 4-phase intervention program for veterans who have active criminal cases and who are having difficulty staying clean, sober, or coping with those mental health or TBI issues. It's a collaborative effort here in Rock County between all the members of the Rock County criminal justice system, the VA, and other partners. Treatment intervention is structured around the authority and personal involvement of the vet court judge. That judge is currently Judge Hansen. He was a Army officer, West Point grad. And Veterans Court involves frequent court appearances. We appear every 2 weeks, alternate between Zoom and in person. Unless there's a graduation, we usually try to get everybody there in person. There's random drug testing, community supervision. For some people, it's not required that you be on probation to attend Veterans Treatment Court. We currently have members who are not on probation. They get counseling both in individual and group sessions. The court rewards members for positive behavior and imposes sanctions for negative behavior. If you aren't able to comply with the rules, you have several violations, you could be placed back on short-term custody, required to come to court more frequently. There's a variety of other sanctions. They usually start off pretty low, involving writing a paper, or just if people can't keep stuff scheduled, just go buy a calendar and show us that you've calendared all your events. Screening for our program, in reality, there's only 2 qualifications to get into Veterans Court here in Rock County. Number 1, that you're able to qualify for VA services, and number 2, the district attorney approves your particular criminal case for a Veterans Court disposition. Basically, that means that the district attorney here in Rock County is not going to approve someone with a very high level case, a homicide or something like that, to get into Vets Court. But generally, if they identify that this person has a substance use or an additional need and that they're a veteran, they'll be approved. We also differ from other treatment courts in that our decision on entry isn't simply based on traditional treatment court models of some of the participants having to be high risk and high need. As long as they're able to get connected with VA services, and the DA agrees, we are able to get people into Veterans Treatment Court here in Rock County, as long as everyone in the group agrees that this person has something that we can offer them through Veterans Treatment Court. Like I said, it is a 4-phase program. It's intended to take a minimum of 14 months to complete. The first phase is a stabilization phase. The main goal of that is to orient the participant to the requirements of the program, develop their individualized treatment plan, and engage with treatment. The length of this phase is usually about 3 months. It's expected of participants to remain violation-free for 30 days and sobriety for 2 weeks prior to being promoted to phase 2. So in phase 2, the focus is, it's called the pro-social phase. Focus is getting them back reintegrated into society and demonstrate compliance and progress with their individualized treatment plan that they've gotten in phase 1. The length of this phase is usually about 4 months. Progress addressing their behavioral health issues and reducing risk to reoffend must be demonstrated. And in order for them to move to phase 3, they've got to remain violation-free, meaning that they don't have any missed appointments, anything that probation has put in rules, that they haven't had any rule violations, and they've got to remain sober for 60 days at this point to move to the next phase. In the 3rd phase of our program, the adaptive habilitation phase, once again, they've got to be complying with their individualized treatment plan. This phase is intended to last about 4 months. In order to move past this phase, they have to remain violation-free for about 30 days and sobriety for 60 days. And then finally, the final phase is the continuing care phase. That phase is to allow them to stabilize within their individualized treatment plan. The minimum length of this phase is about 3 months. And they must remain sober and violation-free for approximately 30 days prior to graduation. Each phase, they also need all of the members of the Veterans Treatment Court team to agree that they should be able to phase up. The members of our treatment team are, like I said, Judge Hanson, a representative from the district attorney is on part of our team. We have 2 members from probation, and we have 1 defense attorney, that's myself. The VA pretty much carries staffing, if you ask me. Prior to Ed, they had Lisa Tuttle there, and she generated a sheet that basically gives you a comprehensive view of everything that this veteran is going through while they're moving through Veterans Treatment Court. what their goals are, what they've attended in the past 2 weeks since your last hearing, all of their negative, or if they've just entered the program, continuing positive drug tests, and what phase they're in, what actions they need to take to get to the next phase. And they usually brief the team on where they're at and let us know, and it gives us a lot of information and helps us make the correct decision with veterans as they move through the program. We also have mentors within our program and a mentor coordinator, and that just gives the veterans basically someone to talk to at any point in time. They can contact their mentor, reach out, and just have someone to talk to, another fellow veteran. And I can give some information on if anyone wants to become a mentor. We have someone to reach out to for that. We are also assessed by Dr. Gregory. He's a professor at the University of Whitewater, and he assesses our program on a traditional treatment court model, which we don't entirely follow to the letter, but he gives us a review every so many years on how we're doing and what we could be doing better for veterans. Other than that, just as far as a little bit more specifics on the legal avenue, people will generally enter a plea to whatever their criminal case is. Some people can have a felony hold open agreement. They'll enter a plea to a felony, but the judge will stop the case right there. They'll either be placed on probation on a misdemeanor count, and basically once the person completes veterans court in its entirety, graduates, they come back in front of the judge, and the district attorney would move to dismiss that felony count that they had stalled or left open, and that count would then be dismissed, allowing the person to not have any type of felony conviction. So what some of the results that we have, looking at the recidivism numbers, I've got Dr. Gregory's report, and since Veterans Court began in 2009, they have a graduation rate of about 79%. Only one of the participants was arrested while in the program, and none of the program graduates were convicted of a new criminal offense 1 year after graduation. So I think they've got a pretty good track record on recidivism. And yeah, it's a really great program for veterans here in Rock County.
Well, thank you, Colin, so much. So we are gonna keep moving down the sequential intercept model now to the fourth intercept point and have Craig and Chris talk to us about the work that they do throughout the state, really, with this population.
All right, thank you, Ed. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Chris Stevens. I serve as the warden at Green Bay Correctional Institution in Green Bay, Wisconsin here. I've been with the Department of Corrections for a little over 26 years in different capacities, but Craig Pasalt and I co-chair an incarcerated veterans program for the Department of Corrections. And basically we have site coordinators at each site. There's 37 sites or facilities in the state of Wisconsin where people are incarcerated. The intake site is Dodge Correctional Institution. So when folks get sentenced, they're in jail and they go to Dodge Correctional Institution, where one of the veteran coordinators are at, or there's several veteran coordinators at that site, where they will, in part of the screening process, screen folks to, and one of the questions is, are you a veteran? And then of course they say yes or no. If they say yes, then we have to vet that. We'll reach out to our veteran service partners that Ed mentioned earlier and vet that, go through the DD 214 process, and then we enter it into a database that they are a veteran. Their social workers work with them at each site. Some sites have veteran wings on the units, where in the veteran wings, maybe they might do something like go out and raise the flag every day and then take down the flag at night. Show maybe movies or just have peer support groups at sites, and do different things to recognize them, help them out throughout the incarceration. Right now we have approximately 1,100 of our 22,000 incarcerated people are veterans, identified veterans, and then there's another 160 that are in supervised living facilities throughout the state. So there's quite a few justice involved veterans that are incarcerated or on supervision. Craig might have better numbers of the supervision process, who's on supervision. But within throughout their incarceration, if they have questions, we'll with the site coordinators, they will reach out to maybe a CVSO and get the answer to that question, or just reach out to each other as a group. There's a distribution list where they can send out a question or a resource and share that with the entire state at all the sites, and get answers for any of the incarcerated individuals. So within 6 months of release, then they'll the CVSOs or DWD folks might come on site or schedule phone calls to help them set up for release, offer services that they had no idea that were available to them, and then help set up with that reentry plan into the Division of Community Corrections. And that's where Craig's world is. So I guess I'll pass that on to Craig.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for the invite, Ed. Thanks for all your hard work and all of this, and Chris. I have been with the probation and parole here in the state for a little over 22 years now, last 5 as a field supervisor. I supervise a unit of agents here in Milwaukee at our state office building. Prior to that, I was at a different location and actually supervised an agent that was our liaison with the Milwaukee County Veterans Court. So not only do I have the privilege of now knowing the incarcerated portion, I did quite a bit and was in court with my agent during the Veterans Treatment Court here in Milwaukee. As Chris said, somehow I became the co-chair of the Incarcerated Veterans Committee. So I take that with pride. Chris has done an amazing job at facilitating this, along with Ed and all of our other partners within this system here. I think my portion is just a small cog in the wheel. I'm fortunate enough, I've served 14 years in the Coast Guard Reserve as well. So being a part of this is a tremendous privilege. Basically, from what the probation and parole standpoint is at the beginning of each month, beside our meetings every couple of months with the Incarcerated Veterans Committee, Chris sends out the list of incarcerated veterans, and what my portion then is to facilitate that list to the entire Milwaukee region, to the other supervisors and agents, and ensure that they are communicating with the institution's social worker and other partners to ensure that that client is in the right place for being released, that they have their programming in place, that they have their housing in place, anything that is needed given their designation of discharge and what programs they are eligible. So it's extremely important to have all of that in place, because it actually makes the job for the agent a lot easier, because that veteran does have that ability to have all of that program and housing that just a normal citizen doesn't. So then from there, I usually field a lot of different questions of if possibly there isn't someone that is released but is placed on supervision, and trying to figure out if that person is veteran eligible for any type of services, obviously finding out what type of discharge they have, and then connecting the dots so that they can get the programming that they deserved and worked for while they were in the military. Majority of the legwork is done, within the institutions. And so that's where all the real hard work is, beside, all of the other portions of this in the intercept. I have agents reach out to me, usually on a weekly basis, trying to connect the dots to different veteran services and everything. And being a part of this committee has really been extremely beneficial to get those people into the programming, and especially housing, so that we don't have the crisis of, homeless vets, let alone the regular people that are on supervision. So, yeah, being a part of this for the last 5 or so years now has been quite incredible. And, I'm looking forward to continuing this and all of the work that we do here. So I appreciate being a part of this and speaking to you today. So thank you.
There's a question in the chat about, and for some reason I can't post in the chat, but if there was a public list of the incarcerated folks, I believe is what it was. There's not a public list that goes out. It's something that's shared with the group of external partners that we meet with quarterly. And then there's a internal list that goes to the coordinators, and that's a little more specific with some confidential information that we can't share. Who was asking for that? I lost it in the chat.
Well, that was Aaron.
Aaron. There you go.
Asked about that.
So I can't drop it in the chat, the external list that I could share with the group, but I could email it to somebody if they want to drop it in the chat. Maybe Ed, are you able to drop anything in the chat?
I probably could, yeah, if you want to email me that, sure.
But
Okay.
I want to make sure we're talking about the same thing. Aaron is requesting a list of the number of veterans by facility.
Oh, number by facility. Well, the list has who's at which facility.
I think that's probably more information than we would
Yeah.
need.
Yep, we don't have that separated out right now. It's in depth, but I guess, Aaron, if you want to send me an email, I could put my message or my email address in the chat, and I could break it down maybe next week and send that out to you, and you can maybe share it with the group. There we go. I'll send it to you. And if anybody has any questions, I'll just put my email address in the chat anyway. So I'll do that now. Does anybody have any questions? I know I covered that pretty fast, and making sure that there's time for everybody else to speak.
Hey, Chris, this is Kathy. I think the panel, I think, has wrapped up, and we can get into some of these questions. And I think I'll review some of the questions that are appearing in the chat. But one thing in particular, I know that from prior experience that individuals that are entering the state correction system, they do their intake at Dodge. And I know that the Wisconsin Department of Veterans Affairs, I think the VA has staff that go and when individuals are there doing that intake at Dodge, and they try to talk with the veterans and inform them of, what they're, what they can expect, at least as far as effect on their benefits or whatnot. And I'm wondering, on the other end, as individuals are preparing for reentry into the communities, because they're all at different institutions, it's not like they all exit then through Dodge. How comprehensive is, or can, I guess, that kind of connection be as individuals prepare to leave those institutions and re-enter? I've heard that from the Wisconsin Department of Veterans Affairs. They've got their Veteran Outreach and Recovery Program, and it differs between institution as far as whether those outreach coordinators are able to enter those institutions and work with veterans as they prepare to leave. I don't know, do you have any insights there as far as some of the preparations that are occurring to help set these veterans up for success?
Yeah, great question. So they're afforded the same resources as they are at the intake as they are at intake as they are for release. So the site coordinators and or maybe a social worker will be the conduit between the incarcerated person and maybe a CVSO or somebody from the DWD or WDVA. So they will come on site and or schedule a phone call, or both, and maybe multiple, as much as it takes to answer the questions, set them up for success, and reactivate benefits and all those things. So we've done a heck of a job in the past few years establishing that conduit and meeting with our external partners, bringing our external and internal partners together quarterly. And a lot of times the faces change, but then there's a lot of times they don't either. But it's always a good opportunity for folks to ask questions. Our meetings are typically virtual, and everybody turns on their camera and you put a face to the name. So I haven't heard complaints. If there's questions, and there always is, the group is quick to answer them, and everybody's quick to provide resources as available. Does that answer your question?
Maybe
It
Kathy,
does,
to
thanks.
add one more piece. I think the good news is, like, for example, myself, I'm going into all the prisons in my area, and even if VORP is not going into one of these for whatever reason, I will often refer veterans to VORP for at least for when they get out, or like a call while they're in. So even if they're not directly going in, there's still like a linkage made for myself, and I know a number of my colleagues will often refer to CVSOs or WD.
Thank you. Thank you. So I'm going to go and hit some of these questions that are in the chat, because I'm not sure if everybody's able to view the chat. And I'm going to go scroll up here to the top. And for Andrew, does the Madison Police Department and other law enforcement agencies have baseline information about the Compact Act? So referencing veterans in suicidal crisis, access to emergency departments and benefits regardless of their VA healthcare eligibility.
So yeah, when that passed, that wasn't too long ago. I did send out an email to the department to let them know that any veteran that's in crisis can get through that crisis period at any hospital that they want at no cost to them. So yeah, as part of what our patrol officers will do is ask the citizens that we're in contact with which hospital they would prefer based on if they have insurance or a preference or whatnot. And so we're always going to take them to whatever hospital they would feel most comfortable going to. I mean, thankfully, Madison anyways, we have, several hospital options that are all located right in the downtown area. So, if somebody identifies that they would prefer to go to one hospital or another, we'll take them there, or Madison Fire will take them there if they're doing the transport. So I have not run into any situations that I've heard of that an officer has used that initiative to take somebody to a hospital that they normally wouldn't go to or wouldn't be able to pay for. But the department is aware of that act.
Thank you. Okay, so Colin, thank you for that information about becoming a volunteer mentor. And related, do you know, is there any difficulty in obtaining mentors? And I know that you're in Rock County, but I'm wondering about also if you've heard through the the network in some of the other counties, and I guess I'm thinking particularly with Dane, if you have any awareness there, is there a need for more mentors?
Yeah, I can't speak to the other counties, but I know here, I believe we have 2 veteran mentors currently. And then the number that I provided in there is Denise Davidson is who oversees the mentor. So we only have 2 currently. And I know this program was accessible to people in other counties in the surrounding area previously, but I believe it's just Rock County now. And I don't know if they have access in those other counties.
Okay, thank you. I think that I know that counties or areas around the state have tried to establish veterans courts, some with more success than others. And I think that Rock County, because it was the first one, was one of those counties that was then taking in veterans from other counties, according to the state's website that lists the veteran treatments courts. I think Dane County, it appears, handles veterans from other counties. So I just want to make sure. So did I hear you right? That now in Rock County, you're only taking veterans from Rock County?
Yeah, that's my
Okay.
understanding. I don't know what the change was. I think it was probably a funding change. And but yeah, I in my year and a half that I've been here, it's only been Rock County.
Okay. Thank you for that. And is there, for one more question on the mentors, is there any sort of residency requirement for veterans or for the mentors? So to mentor with the Rock County Veterans Treatment Court, would you need to be a Rock County resident, or could you come?
I don't know that for certain. I did run into one of the mentors at the grocery store last week, so I know he's in the area, but I don't know if that's a requirement. I'd ask
Okay.
Denise Davidson that one, but I don't see why there would be.
Okay, thanks. Thanks for that information. So question for Colin and Ed, with regards to the treatment courts. So, and this is great, Connie, really important. So what, and I know, Ed, you've answered this, and Colin in the chat, but just for the benefit of the discussion. So what if a veteran is a good candidate for the Veterans Treatment Court, but is ineligible for VA healthcare and other services? So what are the ways, or what other ways are available to help veterans in those cases?
Well, here in Rock County, we do have an OWI court where if you have an OWI 3rd or 4th, and they determine you're high risk, high need, you're still able to get services. And then the same for drug treatment. There's a drug treatment court. So whatever path you need, there should be a court available for you, even if you don't have, if you're not able to be connected with services.
Is there a
Okay.
mental health court in Rock County, Alan?
They have 2 other. One of them is like a family recovery court, but I don't believe there's a specific mental health court. No.
Thanks.
And as I'm working down the list, and we did talk about Aaron's question about the number of incarcerated veterans. And just to follow up on that question too, I know as I was, preparing for today, and I was looking for some information on the number of veterans who are incarcerated in Wisconsin, be it in our state facilities or in the county jails. Is there a good source of information as far as data? And I understand that veterans are, we're relying on those individuals to self-report and to self-identify themselves as a veteran. but I had difficulty finding data and statistics. And is anybody aware of who might record, where might be a good place to find that information?
I don't know if there is. I'm checking a fact sheet real quick to see if it's spelled out.
And I think, you know, maybe to piggyback on that, for individuals for veterans who are in the jails, in the county jails, is there anybody on the panel that can speak to what kind of assistance they're getting as far as when they go in and when they're preparing to be released? And I imagine it varies by county, but
I know at least
Yeah.
for Dane County, the Dane County Sheriff, in their system, when we bring somebody in to book them, does now record who is identified as a veteran or not. It's only through self-identification. And I don't believe that it's fact checked or anything up against, you know, a system like Squares or anything like that. But then at least if they're able to identify the individuals, I'm assuming, and I don't know for sure, but I'm assuming that the Dane County Sheriff's Office would then reach out to Ed or his counterparts to try and get the people that are brought in plugged into resources when they're released.
Yeah, if I could add to that, actually Dane County and Rock County both do use a tool similar to Squares. It's called Veterans Reentry Search Service. So it's similar where those two facilities, others throughout the country, some other jails throughout the country also use this too, but they upload their census and then they get a report back of people with documented military history. And yes, my colleague Lisa, for example, outreaches to the Dane County Jail, and my colleague Darlene outreaches to Rock County as well. Every VA hospital has a person like myself, and part of our duties are to outreach to veterans in jails as well. Yeah, so that's
Kathy, the Badger State Sheriff's Association might have information on which counties screen for veteran status.
the Badger State Sheriff's Association?
Yes.
Thanks for that, Keith. And it seems that at least nationally, the proportion of say this, the proportion of incarcerated individuals who are veterans kind of mirrors or is roughly aligned with the proportion of just the general population who are veterans. So is that, I don't know, Chris or
Correct.
Craig,
I could-
yeah, do you think that's kind of consistent? I mean, as far as the veterans that you see in the institutions?
Well, I pulled up the fact sheet at the prison I work at, Green Bay, and it says 3% of the population there is a reported veteran. And those are, again, just the reported veterans. Some people don't want to report that, or, you know, they may have their reasons for that. But so on each institution's fact sheet, if you type up the institution and then look at their fact sheet, there should be a percentage of incarcerated veterans in that.
Thanks. Okay,
Mhm.
and I'm gonna get back to these questions so that we can wrap up the panel and get on with some of the other information and people that we're going to hear from today. But is there veterans outreach at the Wisconsin Resource Center? And Keith, you asked this question, and for those of us who aren't familiar with that, can you explain what the Wisconsin Resource Center is?
Well, Chris, why don't you explain it?
Sure. It's basically one of the facilities with DHS that is a facility with folks with higher mental health needs. So they have the same opportunities there with the Veterans Outreach as any other site of within the Department of Corrections. So we have a veterans coordinator on on that, or on our committee that works out of the Resource Center. So they
Okay.
are afforded the same opportunities prior to release. Not often do they release from there, but they do. Typically they go there for a short stay for maybe a med adjustment or treatment or a group, and then they go back to the institution they came from. But they are there. They have veterans that are incarcerated there, and they're getting the treatment for the mental health needs, and of course the resources that any other site would. So I know that's a little repetitive, but I just wanted to reiterate that they're afforded the same opportunities as everybody else.
Kathy, it's
So-
kind of a hybrid institution. Unless things have changed, the institutional security is provided by DOC, and the mental health treatment is provided by the Department of Health Services. I have a question. This is kind of an outlier, but I assume that there are veterans who are occasionally committed to Mendota or possibly Winnebago based upon a criminal behavior and are either incompetent at the time or found NGRI, not guilty by reason of mental disease or defect. And I know they come out to corrections on conditional release. And community services are provided by a variety of vendors like Milwaukee Correctional, what used to be Milwaukee Correctional Services, Lutheran Social Services, et cetera. Is there any connectivity between what we've been talking about today and those folks?
Not so much with Mendota, but Winnebago Mental Health there is, and the Drug Abuse Correctional Center, which is right next door to them, and the Wisconsin Resource Center. They're all right next door to each other, but those sites, yes. Mendota, not that I'm aware of. And a lot
Not
of
enough.
times our folks go there for short stay, and they're back to the facility, and they're there for that specific treatment, but not often. There's not a large population that go back and forth between the Division of Adult Institutions and Mendota.
I will occasionally get contact from staff at Mendota and provide information, but at least here locally, we don't do consistent outreach.
Okay, thank you.
So we've got one more question for Andrew, and it's about the CIT training. And then I've just got a question for all of the panelists to kind of close out the panel. And for everybody on the line that's listening, all of these resources that have been put in the chat and with links and I think some documents, we will provide that in our post forum newsletter. So look for our newsletter and we'll include this information. But so Andrew, the question was, how does crisis intervention training work for the Madison Police Department? Do officers get that once a year, and who provides that? For example, is that NAMI Wisconsin or NAMI Dane County?
So yeah, currently only the full-time mental health officers attend the 1 week CIT training that's put on by NAMI. Any agency can request to host it, and then they will usually throw out an invite to fellow agencies to see if any officers want to go through. A lot of smaller rural agencies, that's really the only mental health training that they get is CIT. So like when I went through a year ago, we went through Sun Prairie Police Department hosted it. We were able to attend. It's all free training. NAMI, so NAMI puts on the training, and it's NAMI Dane County that does it for at least Dane County. They also have a CIP program, which is designed for community partners outside of law enforcement or just corresponding law enforcement and crisis. So and these are all trainings that are free, so you can always go to NAMI Dane County or NAMI Wisconsin and get that information. So basically, like the military, you can't always afford to send people to the training. Our department sends the full-time mental health officers, and then it's with the intention that we then go back and teach the officers that are in our specific districts. We have another layer within the Madison Police Department. We have mental health liaison officers, and these are just officers that voluntarily want to sign up and assist the mental health unit, the full-time mental health unit, with doing projects, reading reports, doing follow-up in the field, etc. So we do a lot of training to the mental health liaison officers, and then they too go to their various shifts and days and try and pass that information on. So yeah, as far as the actual training, we also go, the mental health unit goes to the NAMI symposium, which I don't know if last year was the first year. It was the first year that I was attended, and we're going again in June, and they have a 2-day symposium. The first day is more CIT, law enforcement co-responder, and then the second day is additional training, advanced CIT training, and it's optional. And they do different topics each year. Last year was dementia, and this year I'm not quite certain what the topic is for that second day of training. But yeah, currently with Madison Police Department, only the full-time mental health officers. But when I went through, we had deputies from Adams County, and they said that all of their deputies go through the CIT training. So a great resource, and what's better is that it's free to the departments, both their CIT and CIP training. So people should look into it if they're able to.
Thanks for mentioning that. And I see that I did miss a question in the list. And so I'm going to ask panelists. I've got a couple of questions for you. And this is for everybody, so you can fight over who's going to answer first. So the first question is, have you observed differences in the needs for female veterans compared to male veterans in the justice system? And if so, how are those addressed? And then the second question is really the wrap up too, is that what are the greatest needs that you see for justice involved vets, and how can VetsCAN be supportive or involved? What can we do as an organization or our members do to assist these veterans? So that's kind of a lot I'm throwing at you, but.
I can start by answering some of it. There are far less women incarcerated veterans in the system. I'm not sure what the numbers are off the top of my head, but they are afforded the same opportunity as the men are. They still meet with the CVSOs and DWD, that they're provided all the services. In general, I think it's housing and employment are the two big resources that folks have a hard time, if they don't have family support systems, are the two biggest issues. And obviously you need to work, and you need to have money, and you need a place to stay. So those are the biggest things, but there's so many resources out there that we try to take advantage of and utilize. So
Thank you. Yeah.
those folks don't go home homeless. They don't leave homeless, or we do everything we can to make sure that they don't. Craig,
we
did
heard
you want to
from-
pick up?
Last
Sure.
month, we heard from the Rock Valley Community Partners, and we heard about their program and that they work closely with the facilities as far as a housing option for some individuals who are leaving the facilities.
Yeah, maybe
Yeah,
on that
again-
point, Kathy, Rock Valley has been incredible. They've been an incredible partner. Not every veteran can go to Rock Valley, unfortunately, but and the really unique thing about Rock Valley is that they will take people right from institutions sometimes, so they don't have to have that period of homelessness when they get out. I think, like Warden Stevens said, housing is a big one, especially veterans with sex offense histories. In many ways, that's a real issue, and there's a lot of barriers there.
And
I hate to drag on because I know we're getting so short on time, but one thing that comes to mind is that single female veterans with children always are a special needs population. And, they wind up, as you say, incarcerated at a lesser rate as a general population as females. But do you guys encounter needing to work on that issue in those special cases? Because typically it is the one woman veteran, single veteran, who winds up with the kids. Any comments or thoughts on that?
Well, they would be they'd be afforded the same opportunities as the men would if they were released with only children. So both ways, we want to make sure that they're set up for success the best we can with our community partners. So are there concerns?
I'm really asking if you see a special need there. I have no doubt that women vets are afforded the same opportunities as male vets, but occasionally the needs of women vets differ from the needs of male vets. That's what I think we're trying to get to.
I got you. Thank you for clarifying that. Not that I've been made aware of myself, and we meet regularly and we talk about any obstacles or issues, concerns, anything along those lines, and nothing that I heard of from our community partners and our on-site coordinators. So typically, if you don't hear anything, that's good news in our field. You only hear about the issues, and those are the things you want to work on. So I know that's a real general vague answer, but I haven't heard of any concerns as far as not having the resources. So I think that's about the best I could answer that question.
Appreciate it.
thanks, Chris. And in the chat, Michael from CVI, the Center for Veterans Issues, mentions the Supportive Services for Veterans and Families, SSVF program. And they've also, at CVI, they've also worked with Rock Valley Community Partners, but SSVF, thanks for mentioning that program, Mike. Okay, any other questions? Okay, thank you, Ed and Chris and Andrew and Craig. We very much appreciate all the information that you've shared, and thank you for our participants for the questions and the interests. This is wonderful information. And again, we will push out these resources in our next newsletter.
Thank you so much. I've listed here some of our contact information and then some of the resources we've discussed. They're linked here for folks to look into further. And thank you so very much.
Perfect, thanks. Okay, so in the 6 minutes that we've got left, we're going to go and have our updates from, do we have Jim Bowe from the hospital?
Yep, I'm here and I'll make it quick. We were planning on doing one of our veteran teletown halls next Wednesday. We had to shift that to the right a little bit, so we've rescheduled it for May 22nd at noon. If you had the link and you registered for the phone call for the teletown hall, you can still use the same link and register for May 22nd. East and Baraboo are coming along great. If you've driven by, it's starting to get exciting. We're starting to at least get the keys so we can get in and start setting things up. We do have it. We tentatively have the East ribbon cutting scheduled for June just had it up. Daggone it. Sorry about that. June 25th. At 3:30 is what we're eyeballing for the ribbon cutting. We've had it on the calendar now for 2 months, and it still is looking like we should hit that mark, but you all will be getting an invitation here in the future. And then the only other thing is, I know some of our presenters had talked about their volunteers and they're looking for volunteers. Just a reminder that next week is National Volunteer Week. We have a few activities planned throughout the week to honor our volunteers. But other than that, I just appreciate the conversation and all the new people, and hope you keep coming back and that you are now added to our newsletter distribution list.
Thanks so much, Jim. Any questions for Jim? Okay, and Joey, are you here from
I am.
WDBA?
I just want to thank everyone who presented. We are actively involved. Ed works closely with some of my colleagues here at WDVA who go to Dodge, I think, on a monthly basis to do intake, with the veterans. I did want to say this is just a beginning of the discussion for us at WDVA. Many of you may have heard reference to what people call the Incarcerated Veterans Program. And I think people assume that that means that the legislature has appropriated monies for this, but it is not really a program in that sense. It is the volunteer and work of people in various agencies like DOC, DWD, DVA, and others who have come together and sort of extra workload to take this on. So I just want to make sure people are aware that when you hear that term, the Incarcerated Veterans project or program, it's because of the great work that people have been doing without the resources from the legislature, and there may be an effort to change that. So like I say, this is the beginning of a discussion, and hopefully we'll be able to continue it through VetsCAN and others. So
Thanks. It'd be nice to see like some formality develop in that going forward. Hey, question, I know, and it might be a little early and I don't mean to blindside you, because I didn't give you a heads up on this. But as we're looking through the summer, I know that in the fall is generally the timeline for the nonprofit grants availability. And I just wanted to maybe put it on your radar, and looking at your face and your reaction. It's like, but maybe next month, because we want to make sure that our partners on the call kind of are aware of it, because sometimes, the announcement comes out, hey, it's the application time, and there's the 30-day window for applying. So it'd be nice if our audience and it's like our partners kind of have that heads up and can kind of plan when to prepare their applications.
yes, and as I think most of you know, I'm relatively new to WDVA, and that's one of the things I identified, that the windows for the application periods are relatively small, and that limits who can apply for them. So we are, for the next round, we are going to announce them earlier, and we are going to have a longer window. So I will, like I say, I think it was in the fall last time. It may have been later fall, but we will message heard and agreed, and we are going to work, and I will have more info on that at one of the next VetsCAN's meeting for you.
That's great. And I'm glad I brought it up, because it's like we will be taking a break over the summer. July and August, we don't have our forums scheduled. So yeah, we'll look forward to getting additional information. Any questions for Joey? All right, well, thanks. And an opportunity, are there any updates or information to be shared from anybody in the audience regarding any of your activities or events or anything that you want to share with us? No takers. Okay. Well, thank you again, everyone, for joining us, and thank you for the questions and the participation. It was wonderful to have you.
See you next month, we hope.
Yes,
Thanks all.
and don't forget to invite somebody.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Bye.
Bye.